because our earlier broadcast was cut short or prematurely when power decided to go off. It was threatening to rain. There was a couple of lightning. There are bit of strong winds, and then on our of our power went. So the switch was flipped, and yet we were still talking. So I thought we should get back here and finish what we started, perhaps, and have a do-over. Um, it's always the less ideal scenario, but it's one that we unfortunately have to do, and really it does pain that we have to sometimes have to do that, but I mean, our options are oftentimes limited. I tried resuming with the broadcast, but my internet from my phone couldn't let me. It wasn't propagating in the manner that I would have, sort of loved. So let me get ourselves set, and we will kick things as we will start things off. But I think we'll start things off from uh, from Thomas Partey. That's right with Arsenal, because there have been some new developments ever since we last spoke about Thomas Partey. The last time I was on here, I was telling you about uh, plans that Arsenal were, trying to give him a new contract, and the speculation was in the manner that it was going to be a 2-year contract, and or a 1-year contract with an option for a further year. Now, of course, there's been many reports making the rounds that, from Arsenal's point of view, or the expectation is that both Jorginho and Partey will leave. Of course, we've already spoken at length about Jorginho's pending move to Flamingo and that kind of thing. Now, it is true that up to until this stage, the club have not offered Thomas Partey any contract proposals whatsoever. But like I said, it was something that they were working on. It is a reconsideration given the Ghanaian international's performance so far this season, because it's been quite very, very impressive. Beyond the double header against Real Madrid at the quarterfinals of the UEFA Champions League that Arsenal managed to overcome 5-1 on aggregate, the story was like that expectation. Arsenal are preparing themselves for comprehensive midfield rebuild, and that has been going on for some time. Of course, it speaks to the introduction of Declan Rice last season, at the start of last season, it speaks to the signing of Mikel Merino. It speaks to the signing of Martin Zubimendi, but Martin Zubimendi, for me, is a more replacement for Jorginho than he is for Thomas Partey, and things of that nature. So there's been a lot of speculation, especially during the course of the week, saying that Thomas Partey will be leaving the club, and that Arsenal are planning to are starting to find his potential replacements. I won't dismiss all those reports. That's all still true to a certain extent, but from my understanding, or from what I gather, is that the club are reconsidering the decision on awarding, Thomas Partey a contract. Now, again, it's based on entirely on the performances he's been able to give the team this season, and we've said it on here before as an argument that it would then be ideal for Arsenal to let go of Thomas Partey in the same window that they let go of Jorginho. So maybe Mikel Arteta has had the same, food for thought. Last when we spoke about the matter, Mikel Arteta had been, hello, Ra. Thanks for tuning to the broadcast. You much appreciated. Thank you for your comment. So the last time we spoke about him, Mikel Arteta had been asked in the pre-match press conference leading to the Ipswich game whether they were giving, Thomas Partey a new contract, and he said he was leaving that to Andrea. That's Andrea Batter, the new sporting director, to handle all contract matters. Now, Mikel Arteta, in his wording, did not specifically speak to the context of Thomas Partey, but he spoke in generality of contracts that need to be given out to players, including the likes of William Saliba, Bukayo Saka, We all know that those discussions have been ongoing. Miles Lewis Kelly is one of those whose contract they are looking to, to review or kind of give him a better contract, and then Thomas Partey does fall within that gap. Of course, the priorities are with Bukayo Saka, with William Saliba, given that at the end of the season, I think we will have, will it be just a year or two left to his contract and that kind of thing. So that's the cohort of players that they are really looking at. But Thomas Partey does follow in there. This is so so Sumiran, thanks for the comment. Much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, do not forget to kindly, subscribe and like this broadcast as well. But you're much appreciated. So, like I was saying, so Andrea Bata is now handling all these contract issues. The last thing that Arsenal would want to find themselves in, or the position, is that in which they found themselves years back with Mesut Ozil, with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, or most recently in a position where Liverpool have found themselves with players running down their contracts in Virgil van Dijk, in Mo Salah, in Alexander Trent-Arnold. While they've been able to successfully convince Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah to renew their contracts, I mean, all season run, we've been treated to reports that Real Madrid were quoting Alexander Trent-Arnold, and until this stage, they had reached a gentleman's agreement that the 26-year-old England international will be joining them at the end of the season. In fact, the reports went to as far as speculate that they would request Trent Alexander-Arnold or Liverpool directly to let the player out of his contract before June 30th. Why? Because they would want the player to play for them in the forthcoming FIFA Club World Cup, in the new edition of the FIFA Club World Cup competition that will be hosted in the United States of America across 11 cities. We spoke about that competition at length. Do check out the video on the channel. So that's, Arsenal wouldn't want to find themselves in that kind of similar situation where players' contracts are running down and their club suffering for their signature and that kind of thing. So that's the situation with Thomas Partey. It is true that Arsenal have not yet put a contract on table, but it is something that they are mulling over as they weigh their options, as they also handle contracts of other players, including Miles Lewis Kelly. We've spoken about Bukayo Saka. They've made some progress on that. We've spoken about William Saliba. Those talks have not yet started, but that engagement should be coming down really soon as far as player contracts are concerned at Arsenal. So whether Thomas Partey will eventually stay at Arsenal, that's something we wait to see happen. Whether he will leave, it will be very unfortunate for Arsenal fans and for Arsenal as a team, but it will be a decision possibly that the club will have made and perhaps be looking for replacements. When time to talk transfers does come, especially in the larger context of things, we'll get to speak about that. Thank you to all those that have liked the broadcast. Guys, continue liking the broadcast and give me your comments. So let's move forward. The other topic I did want us to talk about was still in the realm of transfers, was Manchester United, who have made progress in trying to sign Matheus Cunha from Manchester United. We all know that Matheus Cunha was subject to a lot of transfer speculation during the January transfer window, with Nottingham Forest having been reported to be the ones leading the lead taking the lead at that time, despite interest from other clubs that included Manchester United themselves, Arsenal, and footnotes or whispers of Chelsea in the mix of that conversation. Now, the reason as to why he was increasingly being reported or linked with the move to Arsenal was because of course, we know he's a very good player, but also when it started to appear that Arsenal were increasingly likely to land Andre Beta, that's the former Atletico Madrid sporting director, where Matheus Cunha himself played at some point in his career before leaving to join Wolverhampton Wanderers. Then those rumors were further intensified in, linking the Brazilian international with the move to the Emirates Stadium and that kind of thing. But as of yesterday, it was Manchester United that had made way after after initial talks with the players' camp in regards to a potential move to Old Trafford. Of course, we've been told before that the player would prefer to move to Old Trafford as opposed to move to Nottingham Forest should the decision come to that. Kumara, thank you so much. Kumara, I see you. It's Kumara Indian Army. Thank you so much for tuning into the broadcast. Kindly like the broadcast if you haven't already. But your efforts are much appreciated. Thank you so much for your time. So, and in that respect, here's what Fabrizio Romano had to say about the whole speculation that Manchester United are leading the rest to sign Matheus Cunha from Wolves as negotiations are ongoing. And then personal terms are being discussed as Manchester United are aware of more clubs keen, plus a 62.5 million release clause available. Good feeling after initial contacts between Cunha and Manchester United. Now, here's what happened. Manchester United kickstarted those initial talks, but going back in January, when there was a lot of speculation leading, on Matheus Cunha, he chose to sign a new contract with the club, that's Wolverhampton Wanderers, in a bid to, he said, after signing that contract, that he didn't want to hang the club out to dry. We all know that they were in the fight for relegation. That just around the same time had just let go of their manager, Gary O'Neill, who was replaced by Vitor Pereira. In that kind of context of things. So with that said, he's chose to stay, but he did have a gentleman's agreement with the club that should suitable offers come for him in the summer, he should be allowed to leave. And it looks like Wolves will not stand in his way in the summer. So United are leading that race. Briefly, how transfers work is that, for example, in this particular case, if Manchester United are interested in a player like Matheus Cunha, what Manchester United's transfer lead team or those that handle the business will do, they oftentimes will reach out to Matheus Cunha's agent and say, look, we are interested in your player. Do you think, one, he's interested in leaving his current club, in this case, Wolverhampton Wanderers? If that answer is yes, the next question is, would he be willing to join us at Manchester United? If that answer is also yes, then those are initial talks done. It gives a green light for Manchester United to then start talking, contract offers in the form of what it would take to convince Matheus Cunha to join them at Old Trafford. And then if there's no release clause on the side of his current club, then they tend to, ask around either with the agent or any other contacts that they may have of how much they think in the region it would cost to sign the player. So, for example, when it comes to wages, they will ask, we're looking to give the player maybe £120,000 a week. Usually, these wages are oftentimes higher than what they're earning at their parent club. So that's how you get to sway players. And then, they keep going back and forth with an agent until they agree. They talk about agent fees and that kind of thing. Then, once they have, sort of concrete, conviction that everything is okay with the agent side, with the player side, usually, and I say usually because of course some transfers work in a different way, but usually that's how things go. Then they will move to the club and say, to the club level and initiate contact and say, we have interest in one of the players, this player, Matheus Cunha, how much would it cost to get him, to take him? Then they will give their fee and then these guys will table an offer. Or usually, they would simply table an offer and then the others also counter that offer. Mr. Hunter, I love African man. Thank you so much for tuning to the broadcast. Much appreciated. If you're new here, kindly do me a favor and subscribe to the channel and also like this broadcast. Very much appreciated. So usually that's how things go down. And you say your bid is £50 million, and if it's acceptable, if it's not, they give you the counter offer in regards to their expectations, and you go back and forth, negotiate until things are gotten over the line. But usually that's how things go down. Now, before we leave the realm of transfers, I wanted us to speak briefly about the potential exit of Carlo Ancelotti from Real Madrid. That story is not going away because what we were told initially was that that Carlo Ancelotti will be leaving the club after after Real Madrid play in the Copa del Rey final, in which of course they have a date with Barcelona. I need to find out when that specifically when that final is on, so that we do not just speak in speculation. It's the Copa del Rey final. So yes, that game is on this weekend on Saturday, the 26th of April. So that's what we were being told, that Carlo Ancelotti could leave the club in the aftermath of that game, whether they win or they lose it. That was the context. And among the potential candidates for replacements for him at Real Madrid would be none other than a former Real Madrid player, a former Liverpool player, a former Bayern Munich player in Xabi Alonso, the current manager of boss at Bayer Leverkusen. And speaking about that, over the weekend, the Bayer Leverkusen club CEO, that is Cero, had some few comments to feed us in respect to that speculation. So Fabrizio Romano said Xabi Alonso remains a top priority for Real Madrid to replace Ancelotti. Plan clear for months, still waiting for 4 more steps. Leverkusen will not stand in Xabi's way. They are aware of his desire to join Real since he turned down Premier League and Bayern Munich approaches to stay 1 year ago. We all remember that 1 year, again, after guiding Bayer Leverkusen to the Bundesliga title in an unbeaten season, guiding them to the finals of the UEFA Europa League, in which they lost to Atalanta by 3-0. He was subject to a lot of speculation. At the time, Liverpool were searching for another manager at the time when Jurgen Klopp had announced his departure at the end of the season. And then Bayern Munich, it was clear that they were going to part ways with Thomas Tuchel at the end of that season. So that's why Xabi Alonso was subject to speculation, with moves linking him to Bayern Munich and Liverpool at the same time. Liverpool ended up settling with Arne Slot, a decision that has proven to be so good and so great, because they are on the verge of winning the Premier League title. Then they did, of course, be knocked out of the UEFA Champions League at the round of 16 at the hands of Paris Saint-Germain, but that wasn't bad. Of course, we all know they were knocked out of the FA Cup by, I think, Plymouth Agile. And then, of course, we all know that they did reach the finals of the Carabao Cup, in which they lost by 2-1 against Newcastle. So I do not think his debut season has been anything less desirable. In any case, for me, it has been quite brilliant. So here's what the Bayer Leverkusen director, Simon Rolfes, said. There will be a decision on Xabi Alonso's future soon. That's important for us going into the planning of next season. Of course, that's why there will be clarity in the not too distant future for sure. So that was their director speaking, while the CEO had this to say: we have a gentleman's agreement with Xabi Alonso for his exit. If a team in which Xabi Alonso has played comes, we would sit down to talk and we would not prevent him. He went on to say that Xabi Alonso's future has to be decided in the next 3 or 4 weeks, and we have a very good relationship with Real Madrid. Again, that is to cement the speculation that has been going around that while Real Madrid will be looking to replace Carlo Ancelotti, the name they are significantly looking at is none other than their former player in Xabi Alonso. So again, we'll wait for all that speculation to boil down and wait to see where things do lead at the end of the day, whether Xabi Alonso makes the move. But it will be some very, very big shoes to really fill. Some really, really very big shoes to fill. Anyways, let's move away from that. Last night, Real Betis beat up against Girona by 3-1. I think on target for Real Betis uh, was Isiko Alcaran. He did also provide an assist. Anthony, that's the on loan Manchester United player at Real Betis. I forget the other player that did score, but it was a very, very interesting game. 3 goals to 0 by the end of the first half, and then of course Girona needed a very late goal. I think around the 86th minute for what turned out to be a mere consolation there for them in that tie as they lost by 3 goals to 1 in the Spanish La Liga on Monday night football, as far as really things did go down in that respect. But the reason as to why I bring that up is because I wanted us to speak about Anthony, because he's had a wonderful spell, a loan spell so far in his Real Betis career. Of course, the red card he suffered in one of those matches goes down without saying. But yes, it was Cardoso that scored in the 6th minute. It was a header, brilliant header there. Ishiko bringing in that corner to give Betis the lead, and then Anthony was on target as well as Isiko. So those were the 3 goal scorers for Real Betis. So anyway, in total, I think he's managed now 5 goals and 4 assists in the Spanish La Liga since joining them in January on loan from Manchester United. Of course, a while back, I think one of the club officials at Real Betis were saying that they will do everything within their power and within their reach to try and retain Anthony for another season, whether be that or not or in permanent deal. But I get the feeling that given what he's been able to show at Real Betis, the deal may prove a little too expensive for the club to do on a permanent deal, given that United, although they cannot recoup what they spent in bringing him from Ajax, a deal that was north of £85 million, you get the sense that it could be another season-long loan, perhaps with an option or an obligation to buy for a certain fee if they can hammer out a deal. But remember, usually these mid-table teams or clubs at Spain or in Spain usually do not have the financial resources as big as that of Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid. Never mind that in recent times Barcelona had their financial struggles, which also continue. But usually you'll find that sometimes a mid-table team has lesser money at their disposal as far as what they can spend in the transfer window, as opposed to a team that's been relegated in the Premier League, because you get relegated, or a team that has just been promoted from the Championship. For example, at this stage, we know Leeds and Burnley have already been promoted or have confirmed their places in next season's Premier League season. But you're talking about clubs that are going to have what, £100 million at their disposal for spending on transfers, and yet usually in Spain, very few clubs can really afford that. So, anyways, I just wanted us to briefly give Anthony a mention because things are really going right for him there. Ever since he made that, move on loan to sort of revive his career, because it appeared like things were really, really fumbling down at Manchester United. Anyways, last night, speaking of the Premier League, Tottenham Hotspurs did welcome Nottingham Forest at the Tottenham Hotspur London Stadium. In London. So, and they lost by 2 goals to 1. Now, they lost. Although the manager seems to say that's in Ange Postecoglou, that once again they played well, but they lost. He said the same thing, that they played well against Wolverhampton Wanderers, and they lost a game in which they lost by 4 goals to 2 away from home. Now, I think the manager's assessment and ours will differ at more than one stage, but that's what he feels. And this is something that Yemi Karaga was also commenting about, and said that he did not expect the manager to say that. Now, while he was right in the judgment with which he placed, I'll try to differ from him, and I'll say that Ange Postecoglou is right. He's right, because it is in his view that they played well. But what he ought to question himself about, and again, I'll say, even when I'm differing in opinion, slightly, just like from Yemi Karaga, I'll say to Ange Postecoglou, for you to have played well, 1, you must score goals. 2, you must defend well, because those are the basics of the game. That's what wins you games. So if you fail to score, you cannot win. If you fail to defend, then I mean you had better outscore the other team. That's the concept. And Tottenham have not done really much of that in recent times. I remember I company. Uh, Burnley used to play very good football, very entertaining on the pitch whenever you watch them. But they just struggled to score, or they didn't score many goals, and then they were very poor at defending because of the style in which they played. Because one, they did that high press against usually teams that were better at it in terms of beating that high press, and they left themselves exposed. Usually, Tottenham also try to do that. Sometimes you have their centre backs in Christian Romero and Mickey van de Ven, or whoever he's partnered with in that partnership, very high up the pitch, and yet that really exposes you if you can't really drift back in similar speeds. And yesterday, I mean, I beg to differ. I thought Nottingham Forest at least was the better team in the context of what the ambition was for them, because they knew they had to win to remain in the fight for finishing in the top 5. They knew that if they won, they would go in 4th place, I think, behind Newcastle. Newcastle, I would want to believe, have a better goal difference because, like I keep saying, there are 5 teams vying for those 3 places. And the 3 places is from 3rd, 4th, and 5th for the other teams that will qualify for the UEFA Champions League. Now, that's premised on the assumption that Arsenal will finish 2nd. Rosie, hi, hello. Thank you for tuning to the broadcast, man. You much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, kindly do me a favor and subscribe to the channel, and also like this very broadcast. But your time is really, really appreciated. So, like I was saying, there are 5 teams. That's Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, Chelsea, Manchester City, and Aston Villa. Those are the five teams fighting or vying for those 3 places. The assumption meaning that Arsenal will finish 2nd. Of course, Liverpool will retain their top 7. Nobody's going to knock them out of there. But again, Tottenham by the 16th minute of the game, you're already 2 goals down. Are you from Africa? OMG, so cool. Yes, I'm from Africa. I'm from particularly a country called Uganda in the eastern part of Africa, from the capital, Kampala. But thanks for asking. Yes, that's where I'm from. And for purposes of this broadcast, it's about 1:30 in the country. Anyways, thank you so much. So, anyway, Elliot Anderson did score to give Nottingham Forest the lead, while Chris Wood scored in quick succession, because Elliot Anderson's goal was in the 50th minute. Tottenham Hotspurs thought they had defended well in a corner kick, but that ball found him somewhere on the edge of the area, and he fired it back in past Guillermo Vicari. I think it took a slight deflection before hitting the back of the net. Then 5 minutes later, Chris Wood scored. He thought he had made it 2-0, and he scored. He thought he had landed his 19th goal of the season, but that goal was ruled out because I think his arm was in an offside position in the running for that particular goal. So it was ruled out by VAR due to offside. But then in the 16th minute, Chris Wood again scoring a beautiful header of Anthony Elanga's free kick. Of Anthony Elanga's cross to make it 2-0 for Nottingham Forest on the day. And those goals turned out to be enough to win them the game, despite the fact that a substitute in Richarlison did score in the 87th minute for what turned out to be a mere consolation for Tottenham Hotspurs. Of course, Pedro Porro providing the assist for that one. So that in itself meant big strides for this Nottingham Forest side in their pursuit for the top. For finishing in that. For finishing in the top 5. And from the look of things, they moved back 14th, although Newcastle seemed to have a better goal difference. but oh yes, Nottingham Forest have 60 points. They have a point more in comparison to Newcastle. Sorry about that. I thought they were level. Anyways, it's looking at the league table, of course, following that result, Liverpool lead the pile. Arsenal were in action this midweek against Crystal Palace, and I'll be telling you why that is. On Wednesday, we'll be in second place with 66 points. Then Nottingham Forest come 6 points behind them at 60 points, and Newcastle 59 points, Man City in 50th place at 58 points. Now, in 6th and 7th is Chelsea and Aston Villa at 57 points apiece. So those are the other teams that are vying to finish in the top 5. Now, at this stage in the season, what would be my prediction for the other 3 teams that finish in the top 5? This is a hard one to call really. All teams left with 5 games to play: Man City, Chelsea, Aston Villa, Newcastle. Now, Nottingham Forest have been really impressive this season. Can they get it over the line? Nana, yes, thank you, Nana, for joining the broadcast. Love you so much. Love you from Japan. Where are you from? I'm from Uganda, Africa. But thank you for tuning to the broadcast. It's very much appreciated. If you're new, kindly leave me a like and also subscribe to the channel so that I can make it to 1,000 subscribers on the channel. That's at Footballtribeug UG. But thank you so much. So, like I said, my prediction will be that Man City and Newcastle will be one of those teams. Will be among those 3 teams. Newcastle and Man City. Newcastle have, I think, a much easier game against Ipswich Town coming up for them to recover from that 4-1 loss at Aston Villa that they did suffer over the weekend, falling to goals of Amadou Onana, Oli Watkins, Ian Madsen, and who was the other? The other was an own goal by Fabian Schär. Yes. Okay, bro, I'll subscribe. Thank you so much, Nana. Guys, the rest of you that are on the broadcast, kindly subscribe to the channel, kindly like the broadcast if you haven't already liked the broadcast. So anyways, so that's the top 7, and we'll skip the rest in between and then move down to Manchester United, who are in 14th, while Wolverhampton Wanderers are 15th. Tottenham Hotspurs, following that defeat, are still 16th on the Premier League table, and that's the look of things. Of course, the relegated ones have already been confirmed for Southampton, Leicester City, and Ipswich Town. They will be playing for their reputation for the remaining fixtures. Now, again, let's speak about this briefly in context, because seasons gone by, this would be the time that teams fighting relegation switch in that yard. Would be very hard to play. Would be playing like prime Barcelona or prime Real Madrid, but we've not seen that this season. And again, it goes on to, I think, paint you the picture of how the larger season has been in context, hampered by so many injuries in respect with different clubs. I think it's been a case at Arsenal, it's been the case at Tottenham Hotspurs, and then Chelsea have suffered a good number of injuries. Of course, some teams have managed their injuries much better. We all saw what it did to Manchester City when they lost Rodri to that long anterior cruciate ligament injury that he suffered in a 2-2 draw against Arsenal at the Etihad Stadium. I think he suffered that injury around the 16th minute there when he had a bit of a tussle with Thomas Partey. So injuries have changed the course of many teams in the season, have cost them, especially when they had significant players out injured. I think it did cost Newcastle at some stage of the season. They were having a very bad spell because they had lots of injuries. So that's a factor, but that's something for clubs to ponder about going into next season. It can't, I won't say it's an excuse, but I'll say it's an issue that cannot be dismissed either. But anyways, the Premier League does continue tonight. Manchester City are up against Aston Villa. The reason as to why that fixture is being played today is because both teams will be over the weekend. They will be playing in the semi-finals of the FA Cup at Wembley Stadium. The first semi-final will be played on Saturday. I think that is between Crystal Palace and Aston Villa, while the other will be played on Sunday. That's between Manchester City and Nottingham Forest. Those are the 4 teams left in the FA Cup at the semi-final stage. We'll be discussing again tomorrow, because tomorrow the other game is between Arsenal and Crystal Palace. I've mentioned before that Arsenal won't be engaged in the weekend. That's the reason, because the team that's supposed to play on the weekend, Crystal Palace, will be in the FA Cup semi-finals, and that's why that game was moved midweek. And that means that Arsenal could have a higher chance of winning that game, because if you're Crystal Palace and you're in the semi-finals of the FA Cup, you're closer to silverware than never before. Go fight it out. Go beat up against Aston Villa. You have the potential to beat them. At least you've shown. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, in the last 6 Premier League fixtures, Crystal Palace were the last team to beat Aston Villa. They beat them by 4-1. So that was, I think, at Selhurst Park. So bet on yourself that you can knock them out and advance to the finals. And once you reach the finals, regardless of who the opponent is, you will always have a chance. But if in that final it is Man City, then I'm sorry, Crystal Palace, then your chances will be only 20%. Because even very recently, about a week or 2 weeks ago, you met Man City at the Etihad Stadium, took a 2-0 lead, and still capitulated, and they beat you 5-2. I do not want to be the party spoiler, but that's just my opinion on that. But tonight it's Man City versus Aston Villa. Tomorrow it's Arsenal versus Crystal Palace. But in the Spanish La Liga, there's also another important game between Barcelona and Mallorca, while Espanyol will be away to Valencia in the Spanish La Liga. That's at 10 p.m. And then, of course, on Wednesday, there will be more fixtures from the Spanish La Liga. Like I said, over the weekend, Real Madrid and Barcelona will be playing in the Copa del Rey final. But on Wednesday, Athletic Bilbao will be up against Las Palmas. I think Las Palmas beat Atletico Madrid recently. Then Celta Vigo, who capitulated against Barcelona over the weekend, will be up against the Yellow Submarines of Villarreal, while Deportivo Alaves will be up against Real Sociedad. That's tomorrow, again on Wednesday. The Whites of Real Madrid will be away to Getafe. And then, of course, there will be fixtures there in the Italian Serie A, but that's all a script for tomorrow. In the French League One, Paris Saint-Germain are going to be up against Nantes. I know most Africans, or even Ugandans to be more specifically, they pronounce this as Nantes, but it's Nantes. So Paris Saint-Germain will be up against Nantes. They are in. So I do suspect that Paris Saint-Germain will not have a weekend fixture if they do play Nantes in midweek. That's what I suspect, because equally they could be having their rest time in the build-up to that blockbuster semi-final at the Emirates against Arsenal. Of course, the first leg coming on the 29th, and then the return vast fixture. I think, is it around 5th May? Thereabout. Anyways, thank you for always tuning to the broadcast. Your time is always much appreciated. Those of you that tune to the broadcast live while we are here, thank you so much. Those that do like the podcast, those that give me your comments, those that send me your greetings, I do not take your time for granted. Maybe just a few honorable mentions before I sign out from here. We had Ra saying hello. That was the first one. We had Sumiran. Yes, I hope I pronounced that well. Much appreciated. We did have Kumara, the Indian Army. Thank you so much for the time you had with us. We did have we did have Mr. Hunter. We did have Rosie. We did have Nana. Thank you so much for always tuning to the broadcast, and all the rest that were on the broadcast but were unable to send in your comments. I see we had more likes than the commenters, but that is much appreciated. So allow me close it here, wrap it here. and wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Until next time, stay blessed and have a wonderful rest of the week. Bye bye.